Okay, so then we will resume according to our panel's agenda, and I'll try to connect somehow what we've been dealing with in terms of inventories and the standard number 16 as commented by Carlos and Karina in terms of the effects that we could have for our financial statements. And definitely this is something we can connect with the aids and supports given by the government, since certain non-compliances in payments will be affected, or in the case of actual aids from the government. So I'd like to know a little bit more about these aids and how this may impact in our financial statements during pandemic times. So now we have Mr. Pedro Gaytán, PhD, to discuss about this. How would these aids given by the government impact us during pandemic times? Well, we have the NIC 20 in regards to the government aids, dealing with the government itself, even though we also have similar institutions locally, regionally, internationally, and according to what they do, they can specifically bring about aid. Particularly, we have in Mexico the expenses budget, where the ministries pertaining to the state and special lines, like in the case of aids given to micro companies, and each one of these ministries would have particular situations, operation rules. Oy. Okay. Please, Pedro, could you turn on your mic? Once again, we had to close them all because of a strange noise. Yes, it's true. All the microphones had to be closed. And please, as I was saying, in the very particular case of the ministries of a state, each one would have their own operation rules for support to be given. And of course, they would conduct themselves accordingly, but there are non-government organizations that are assisting countries and certain sectors which are considered as vulnerable, certain social sectors that at some point would require it, like in the case of the atmosphere. And according to these NGOs, we have the development of activities according to international operations for development. There are other NGOs for social action, and their initiatives are channeled to social servicing, social inclusion, the people suffering from disabilities, gender equality, and other society sectors impact. There are also some other NGOs devoted to human rights and peacemaking, where actions are also devoted to defend and protect human rights for some injustices, and a concrete case could be Save the Children or International Amnesty. These are emblematic classical examples, and there are also NGOs devoted to the environment in order to urge everyone to take into account climate change and particular aspects like the proposals given by Greenpeace. And the aid from the government is transferring resources to some entities in exchange of certain conditions to be complied with as given by the operational rules. And there are also some other aids that are quite related to the assets. So then that concession would imply that the entity getting benefits is going to acquire certain fixed assets in such a way that they need to establish conditions, additional conditions for not spending in administration lines, but actually catering to the original goal. There are some NGOs that would even ask for financial statements to be revised by an expert public accountant duly registered in order to protect resources already used, so then they would be actually used for their original specification due to the contract and the accountability on the table. But particularly speaking of Mexico and based on COVID-19, well, they've looked for ways to prioritize expenses in order to confront the situation in such a way that such matters of aids have been diminished. All of these subsides that somehow are required for certain sectors. That is the serious inconvenience, and somehow we are also observing that globally many other countries, and unfortunately, have not moved along with these subsidies. And I believe those are the great challenges several countries are experiencing, not only Mexico. Yes, Pedro, you are more than right. And we can see that in terms of the impact, the macro impact of governments, because they are not spilling those resources as scheduled, because they do not have the resources they budgeted in the first place. So then, yes, definitely, all of these sectors are impacted. In the case of Mexico, we can see that due to the pandemic, the proposal that we see under the spotlight is to take away the support to many trust funds, and that would then impact seriously due to this federal spillage. Yes, great inconveniences, great challenges. At some point, we would like them to happen only in our country, for the rest to actually reach their objectives. But this pandemic has not honored any border, and that's why we have this great risk. Yes, thank you, Pedro. Thanks for participating and for focusing our attention on these rules that would definitely be affected by the pandemic. And precisely now that we are talking about AIDS, and a portion of this is going to be also impacted in terms of taxes. And this impact, this aids and tax supports could also impact the treasury activity because of income and resources coming in. So Karina and Diana could now tell us the impact of COVID in this very important line, the way in which we are now contributing with the public expenditure. Please, could you explain us? Well, let's remember that the IFRS are talking about taxes, but it is not about each and everyone, because they are independent. And we can see a generalized position that would be to displace tax paying. Colombia and other countries, more than an imposition, is just additional period given. As Carlos was telling us, and please, let's get to know what is happening in other countries. We have other types of supports that would not be focusing on revenues, but diminishing employment during crisis. And of course, we would not like the collection to be impacted, because they have established a budget like many other countries, and they, even though the payment terms are extended, the benefits should be received. And we can get to see that we are not going to pay 45%, but 43%, and 2 points in favor because of the circumstance. In those cases, we need to analyze, and please keep in mind these 3 bullets. According to the IFRS 12, we need to know if the company is obtaining the tax benefits in order to deduct certain payments. And this could be a deferred asset, short or long-term assets. The second thing we could look at, if income diminished to the point I need to have fiscal planning in place, or if I can record these losses from previous periods, or maybe these taxes were displaced. And of course, we are not going to use the extreme case of Venezuela, but the regular case, in not a great proportion, but the inflation is going to get higher. So generally, what we do in the end of the year? We provision the income tax, but in case of getting this income tax displaced in a considerable period that would be more than 12 months or a year, then I need to analyze if I need to bring it to present value, because provisions today is not going to be paid in 2 years' time, and my financial statements are about my current situation. I would have to use a factor that could be inflation, so I can bring to present value. And projecting to the future. Of course, every scenario would depend upon the figures and the status of the company, but maybe you'll realize that the IFRS 23 regarding uncertainty to acknowledge income tax practically was not that well known, and now it is quite useful to analyze the uncertainty and the implications of COVID over income tax. And as Carlos was telling us, we have great uncertainty coming our way because most of the benefits would not be attributed to income tax. But if we go a little bit further, it could then impact estimation. So let's say that today in Chile, they have a decree of a benefit or support from the government in order to subsidize some payments in terms of Social Security. We need to go to Chile's standards to know what is fiscally behind that benefit. Is that an income for that company? If it is an income, has the jurisdiction considered how this is going to be taxed? And if the nation is actually granting a benefit for paying the payroll, then I need to acknowledge a lesser value, then I am obliged to acknowledge it as an income, and then the percentage is going to be impacted and taxed. So let's have the example that we were reviewing a while ago. If you are paying 30%, that would be the 30% of an income that is a lesser value than my cost. So then I need to file it, and me as a fiscal and financial, tax and financial planning, I cannot say that this income is completely for me. This support from the government is not completely for me, because if we have 30%, but if I have to pay 40% because it's taxed, then it is not going to be 30% as an aid. It is only going to be maybe 12%. I'm going to pay a percentage anyway. So all the examples we have for this provision, and as it was being commented by Sergio about this income tax and the benefits that I could get over it, first would imply the benefits that would impact taxes. The benefits that would not impact my tax, but that would imply more payments, and the taxes that were displaced or called out, or maybe some future benefit that is going to impact me this year, and I would have to see a deferred asset or liable payment. So maybe, Sergio, you could tell us if in this case, as in the case of Colombia, we have a benefit of Social Security reducing 12 points this payment of Social Security, and companies are being given a payroll support to cover 30% of the salary just for those who have a minimum wage in Colombia, like $250 approximately. And there are other benefits for other entities that would be a little bit more specific, but in general terms, those would be like that. And maybe in Mexico, we have something similar. Well, Cari, in Mexico, for the time being, the government has not participated, has not distributed any benefits. At the federal level, we don't have any incentive whatsoever in order for us to reach benefits for tax paying or Social Security. At a state level, and since we are part of a federation in the states, some supports have been given in terms of the payment of taxes over the payroll. We pay certain percentages according to the state, and this depends upon the amount that I pay for my payroll and participation to be given accordingly. Could be 1.5 or maybe 3% of what I'm paying over payrolls. And in this case, several state governments have indeed given subsidies, so they give you an incentive to pay a lower amount as long as you are timely and other requirements. But for the time being, we don't have anything else. And in the specific case of Mexico, the incentives have been established in the law that whenever this benefit is given, we are then going to find out if it is going to be considered or not, if it's going to be taxed. I think we've lost you. I think we have some connection issues. Maybe he'll be able to come back. In short. Karina, you had the floor? Well, what I was doing is that I was asking him and he was sharing that when applying tax benefits and subject to auditing, then small companies would not accept this benefit because they don't know what's better, to get the benefit or getting the audit. Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Penilla is saying that he's got some issues with his connection, and let's keep on discussing the topic if possible. So what is the next topic according to you, to our agenda, please? Well, someone else could then share about these tax benefits and incentives given maybe in Ecuador or Panama. Maybe they can tell us, or anyone else who would feel like sharing could do it now. Juan Carlos, Mr. Juan Carlos, is he somewhere in the audience? Yes, I'm right here, Frida. maybe you could help us out and go on with the topic. Well, I believe that I need to give the floor to someone else because these incentives are not my specialty. But then we can talk about the income. Like in the case of the income, I'm going to address the effects, and this standard has already been revised by us, but what would the effect of income would be? We have income that is fixed because of sales, but we also have variable incomes depending upon certain circumstances, mainly in construction companies, where we could have situations where the payment of an extra would be for completion on time and punishments for not completing on time. These are variables, and we need to study them. And we are in here talking about effects by COVID in this topic, not the standard, what the effect might be. If we have variables, we need to analyze them in order for us to see if they are going to be effective to get acknowledgement in accounting. We can also have lower sales, lower sales that would then provoke some discounts in order to keep on selling. So the appraising parameters for income are going to change due to COVID, at least during 2020. So we can have some returns of merchandise that are going to be higher than the ones we would experience in a regular situation, but discounts are going to set. Maybe we had provisions for volume discounts. If we have a client with different amounts of or quantities of orders, we had discounts, but we are now going to decide if we are actually going to grant such discounts. And please remember that in the past we were acknowledging an income as such. We said, well, this is the income that we are going to get. We've already sold it. We are going to sell it. And that was the historic appraisal. But today, the income that we have to estimate is because of the current sales. We are now going to have a problem to receive or collect because of greater discounts to be granted, or maybe we agreed on this discount because of volume, but now we won't be able to grant it because of the different goals. That is something we need to go through in terms of income. We need to see how the operations are for the company, what agreements are to be kept up. These are agreements that, due to history, are customary given. And we could also give discounts because of anticipated payments. Maybe we had 60 days with a regular price, but now we want to incentivize, we need to give an incentive to other type of payments. And maybe we can tell our clients, maybe I can give you 2% discount because of this sale that is now going to be paid in 30 days. But we can also have returns. And in some cases, we have volume discounts that are going to be adjusted. If I had a volume discount in the past, and if you buy 1,000, if you buy 1,000 regularly, you had a volume discount for 1,000,000 pesos. But now, according to the situation, and for this year, you say, okay, I'm going to adjust it to 500,000. Many clients will be entitled to a volume discount for this tweaking you are doing in order to promote a sale and to displace your inventory. Many other factors would then lead you to record values different from the value of the invoice. You are going to charge less. Remember that this modern accounting under the IFRS, we need to consider the cash flows, not the historic value of documents, but how much is coming into the company at present value. I believe that we have some microphones opened. Toshiba user and others like Raúl Miranda, they need to close their microphones. Please, Raúl Miranda, could you please turn off your mic? And to supplement the income topic, it is an issue, the noises. I would say that we need an expectation to assess if income is going to be recovered. Why? Because I insist there could be some invoices where we are inflating our receivables and sales, but then in the next months we are going to have discounts due to volume. We are going to have returns, and this is going to impact sales. We need to be attentive to that. And this is how I would close, since we need to consider that this income is very likely that if I am an entrepreneur, I can give longer credit terms to my clients, like it happens with large department stores that are giving longer terms. You can pay until February and maybe 24-month credit. So that income should be brought to present value under the market variable rate. As of now, we can have a market rate we can access, and the next month it might change. It might change for December. So that present value for those receivables that will be in the future should be brought in present value. And if we go into receivables, we said before that these receivables should be analyzed in terms of risk to collect. I can give you the example that if I sell, as Carlos Reyes was saying, if I sell to Venezuela, now with the problems they have, maybe this sale I'm talking about, if it is to be recorded, I would only do it in 10% because the likelihood to not get paid would be quite high because of the issues they have. But I want to sell there because I want to open up a new market. So then maybe I sell and I have 1 million sold, and maybe I will retrieve only 10,000 or 100,000 due to issues in that latitude. And that is the new focus for income, and the impact of this situation obviously would then depreciate companies. We have a small downturn of just a few months where companies could then give offer, but there is no demand, or maybe the company could not even offer because of the production chain supply being interrupted. And also careful, there are companies that would say, well, I bought my product to Brazil, a product that has always been made over there, but now I have to turn into China. And I, of course, will have more returns due to quality. That's where we need to be quite technical. And that's how I close my topic in regards to this. Thanks for covering. I had an issue here with my power and my internet connection, but now I'm back. And practically, we only have 10 minutes to go. And please, Miguel Ángel, maybe you could tell us about the effect of the pandemic and what we could consider from the standards impacting us in these pandemic times and the hypothesis of ongoing business. Maybe in 5 minutes you can explain it all. Not much time, but I'll do my best. It is very important to talk about this, and please allow me to share my screen. Please, I'd like to... Are you seeing it now? Someone is making a lot of noise. Please, you need to mute your microphones. If you are not the speaker, you need to mute it, please. Yes, you are actually visualizing my screen, right? Yes. Okay, so this is quite swift. The topic is quite extensive around the world, but just to tell you some aspects of it. The concept framework and the basic standards is telling us about the going concern. That is nothing new. And this is good for many accountants because they never applied it, but this is coming from the past. This analysis about the going concern is something that every company should conduct at some point. They need to present an annual report where they need to analyze in many aspects in order to verify if the company is operating properly, and maybe due to the pandemic they have impacts in many senses and many lines. The basic hypothesis of this going concern would allow us to get to the conclusion that a company and an entity could be considered as a going concern, presumably if there is permanence in the limited horizon. This means that we have an ongoing concern without reaching a detailed analysis. If they have profitable operations according to the Accounting International standards with revenue acceptable margins for operation's sake. And also the operating company according to the 570, and this is quite extensive. This is applicable to auditing of financial statements corresponding to periods finished as of December 15, 2016. So this is not a novelty. We should be analyzing and reporting annually if this company is operating with revenues or not. The responsibilities of the administration are to be responsible of assessing the capacity of the company to continue as a going concern, disclosing the matters related to this basic postulate. We as accountants need to give evidence obtained from auditing to conclude about the appropriateness of the usage and the business accounting basis by the administration. And also we have different considerations to take into account. Also calling upon the interest, the public interest, to the going concern and the disclosing of importance and certainty. Many are taking into account that this is as of 2020, but no, it is as of 2017 that we are obliged to conduct an assessment and an annual report of these aspects, focusing to the most important standards of public interest, assessing that this ongoing business is covering at least 5 years as of the date of the financial status statement and balance, and according to the operational industry. And we were talking about the construction company. Let's say that this is according to work contracts. If we have public works contracts, we have variability, and that is important to take into account. We as auditors are obliged to record the evidence and assessing we need evidence. We need to be fit to verify and conclude if the company is using properly this basic postulate for preparing financial statements and determining if there are uncertainties about the capacity of the business to keep on working. And for that, we need to get some analysis on the table. And I'm going to conclude pretty fast because it is quite extensive. It is not possible to cover it in 5 minutes. So here it is. We need to consider important aspects. We need to know what kind of industry we are dealing with, if this is any type like manufacturing, fisheries, transformation, and so on, just to see what this going concern is all about. And in order for us to keep on operating, we need to get some financial leverages. And we were discussing a while ago the short-term funding or discount granting, or maybe getting longer credit with our suppliers. I also have the experience of some other companies in the sense that they were already conducting these accuracies and the financial area, detecting any excess, they could then continue with some aspects like factoring could be. And as I was saying, and Sergio was also talking about factoring, selling our portfolio with 5 or 10% discount. This is not new. And of course, factoring is an option. I have an invoice issued to Pemex, and then I would be losing 5 or 10% in order to get short-term funding, and that would then be revitalizing our going concern. Maybe 6 months of bad impact. And according to my standpoint, this pandemic is not going to end up immediately. According to the reports we've read in the news and discussion panels, we know that the entities in Mexico or any other country, this crisis will go on. This morning, we had Mr. Carstens informing that some countries are going into technical bankruptcy because of the lack of government support. So his report was very important given last night, and this is a very important financial man who knows pretty well what the situation is. He's been leading the Bank of Mexico. If the economic policy is not the proper one, then we can fall into failures and even bankruptcy, technical bankruptcy. So I have already given the point of view of the going concern or operating business. I would only like to add that what we are going to check in the next hour is that we have incorporated the IFRS number 16, referring to the rights of usage under leasing and the long and short assets, in order to be according to the updating of our information, financial information. That'll be my comment for the time being. Gracias, Miguel Ángel. Yes, and the assessment of the hypothesis of the operating business is telling us that after taking into consideration your available information, then this would be a good point to close our discussion with. So thank you for your presentations, and for the time being, what we are going to do is to give some awards, right? And acknowledgements. Yes, we're going to give you a diploma due to these presentations and the participation of the panel yesterday. And Mr. Adrian is going to show his screen, and the acknowledgements, and accountant Anna is going to help us out. Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, yes. And how are you doing? Pretty well. So I am greeting you from Lima. Yes. Yes. How are you doing? It's so nice to see you, even though we are on video conference. I really miss being in Mexico and getting nurtured by your knowledge, because we are always sharing our realities and how things are coming along in this atypical case given by COVID. Yes. We are looking forward to seeing you once again. Yes. My mission today, and it is an honor as well, to thank our speakers yesterday and today, and on behalf of UC&CS America, we are now presenting this diploma to Mr. Juan Carlos Sánchez for his presentation about the IFRS for small and medium-sized companies, and also to Karina Hernández Peñalosa because she gave a very good presentation for the IFRS for this type of companies, and 16 and 18. Sorry for being this brief, but we have not much time. Mr. Sergio Penilla also because of his presentation about the IFRS, and also Mr. Pedro Gaytán Ángeles for his presentation on the same topic, the FIRS, small and medium-sized companies. Mr. Vicente Torres for this same topic. Carlos Reyes about the effects on financial information due to COVID-19, and this is for today's presentation. Miguel Ángel Quiñones Herrera, the effects on financial information due to COVID-19. Thank you very much. Thanks for participating.